Well, it's hard, given the current educational system in Saudi Arabia. I doubt that Wahhabis are eager to form any kind of, tie or bond with the Iranians. There's enough hatred to stop that. However, Shiites in the eastern province in Saudi Arabia are sympathetic to the Iranian revolution. They co-religionists, and they have fallen under the oppression of the Saudi royal family. So it's only natural that you would gravitate toward a power that is saying, you have to treat these Shiites the right way. Now, I have to say that the Shiites in the Gulf, Arab Shiites, are, I know a lot of them personally, and I read what they write, and I don't think that they are Iranian agents. I really believe that they want justice, and they want to live like everybody else. In Saudi Arabia, if you're a Shiite, you can't be in the army. You can't be in key intelligence positions. You can't move ahead in a wealthy country. So I think it's but the Iranian. I'm not. Also, we have to understand that the Iranians are not. Are also, this is a major power, a regional power, and they want to have their sphere of influence. They want to protect their interests. So we should not think that, Iran is, a democratic country that is trying to free the people. It's not that. It's a major power. It has its interests. It's under sanctions. It's suffering economically, and they want to get out of that situation.
Well, Naseer could probably answer it better than I can. I just do want to mention, though, that is about $5 billion of Saudi money that's going to Egypt, and this is Egypt under a very cruel dictatorship that the human rights situation is worse than it was ever. And the $5 billion is actually given the Egyptian regime the ability to say to the United States, if you criticize us and keep the money from the U.S. Coming to Egypt, we don't really care because we get a lot more money from the Saudis. So that's just one example. And then, of course, there's the issue of Saudi money being used for the schools that are all over the world. You find them in Pakistan, you find them in, well, pretty much all over.
That's right.
And these are the schools where young people are taught to hate us.
Well, as far as 70% supporting ISIS, I said to Stanley in the interview, I said the transition from being a Wahhabi. I'm not talking about an average Saudi who's not exposed to the propaganda intensively, because they do have their own pockets. But the average Wahhabi who really believes to make the transition to an ISIS member is very, very smooth, very, very easy step, because it's pretty much the same ideology. What was the second question?
The Mexicans stand up with nuclear weapons.
Oh, well, if the Saudis and the Israelis want to make sure that whatever deal is happening, the nuclear deal with Iran is not going to be a blurry, unclear deal where the Iranians can one day announce that they have, despite the agreement, developed nuclear weapons. So that is the joint fear of both the Saudis and the Israelis, and they are saying we're going to get a bomb too if you wind up making a lousy deal with the Iranians, and they might.
And just on that, the New York Times reported, there was one of the hitches in the negotiations. And the article calmly said the Saudis may therefore, go get a nuclear bomb themselves. And I'm saying, wow, shouldn't be everybody yelling and screaming. I did yell in the comments, but we should be yelling when we see these guys with a nuclear bomb.
Well, Saudi Arabia is not running out of money. They have a lot of money. So and they are throwing money around. They're giving people a lot of money, like 2 salaries and things like this. They use someone like Osama bin Laden. They used him in Afghanistan. He was able to gather jihadis whose main goal was to go and die. So that's great. America wanted someone to die. These guys wanted to die. So, but then they turn around And that's why it's like, it's like having a dog. The dog is a little crazy. It's useful when you want it to go attack your neighbor. However, it can get so crazy as to attack you. So that is the situation with Osama bin Laden and all these Wahhabis. So it's like a two-way street. You give them money and you pump them up with that ideology, but they can turn around easily and say, you know what, you are not Muslim enough yourselves. We want to have an ISIS-style government. But that is part of making the bomb. Sometimes it blows up in your face.
I want to show you something on our website, because there's a piece about poverty in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we see the stories of the fabulous riches, but a whole section of society is very, very poor.
40%.
What percent?
About 40%, have like difficulty finding a home. Land is an issue because they own all the land. But the thing is, there's no development of people in Saudi Arabia. So even if you have all the money in the world, you spend it on loans and things like this. There is no real educational system in Saudi Arabia. It's all religious. It's all about, how to please God. So no wonder like some Saudis get a lot of money, but they don't know what to do with it because the educational system is all religious education. There is like no finance, no mathematics. Science is like is not something that is so popular. It's like religion and God and pleasing God and making sure that you go to heaven, which is convenient for the Saudi royal family. You don't focus on money and you just keep worrying about.
Now I think it was 2013. She was a maid. She was accused of this crime. She had no real legal defense. The trial was a joke, and they killed her. They cut off her head. I mean, it was horrible. So we had a petition, and we sent notices to the Saudi government. We didn't get an answer, but try different things.
One thing that Ali Al Ahmed has asked us to do is reenact flogging in front of the Saudi embassy.
Wow.
Which we did very successfully, and it went viral in Saudi Arabia. We also did it again at the White House. He keeps asking us to do it. We said, we've done it enough already, but it's that kind of thing that really shames the government.
Can I answer the question? I taught in Saudi Arabia for a while, and I have to tell you that the emphasis on math and science is not adequate. There is, of course, teaching of math and science, but they define knowledge as knowledge of religion. Now, again, there are a lot of Saudis who do wonderful things like yourself. There are a lot of Saudis who get a great education in Saudi Arabia. But generally speaking, the educational system is religious. It emphasizes religion. And if you hear the intellectual leadership in Saudi Arabia, they look down upon secular knowledge, and they consider religious knowledge to be the true knowledge.
In terms of how to support Saudi women, we take our cues from Saudi women. So we're in direct touch with Raif's wife, with Walid's wife. We are in direct touch with the women who do the Women to Drive campaign. We have been asked to do supportive work. For example, when they visit the United States and they want to go to Washington, D.C. and set up meetings with congresspeople or in the State Department, we help them to set up those meetings. We work with Amnesty, who works directly with people from within Saudi Arabia. So we try very carefully to only do things when we've been requested to do them. In terms of the Saudi regime, I think we are reacting to the way they are such a great ally of the U.S. government. And when we see that this year, so far in this year, there have been 88 public executions, beheadings in Saudi Arabia, and that the U.S. government is barely speaking out against them at all, and yet compare it to the way they speak out around the Iranian government, we have to say that we don't want our government in this cozy relationship with the Saudis. So I certainly am sensitive to your feelings about white women coming in to, quote, free Saudi women, but I don't think that's the way we go about it.
One other thing is they have to be careful about is Islamophobia, because when we bring up some of these things, you know, the haters can join in. So before I wrote that piece in the New Haven Register, I spoke to a guy at CARE, one of the higher officials in the Council of American Islamic Relations, and we tried to talk about it. I mean, one thing I always put in is Israel, and those guys, the haters, run away because they don't want any criticism of Israel.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to say that Shiites in Saudi Arabia are oppressed and they are not given any benefit. No, they are given. This is a rich country, and they are given services. They have jobs. However, if you are a Shiite in Saudi Arabia, you are not treated like a Sunni in Saudi Arabia. So, like key positions in government, for example, they are not represented. The security jobs, they are not represented. They are definitely not in power. They do not run things. The emirs run things and own things. So, but by no means, you know.
Well, they expected protests in front of the embassy, and we do that quite often. The Gulf Institute is one of the only groups that is willing to call things in front of the Saudi embassy. We have a lot of Saudi friends that are too afraid to come out, but they'll expect it at the embassy, the consulate. They don't expect it when they're having events, and that's quite shocking to them because the DC culture is one that both the Democrats and the Republicans go to these events, and the elites of the Arab world go to these events. And they're usually very fancy affairs. So no, they don't expect protest.
I understood your question correct. The question is, you know, whether Saudi Arabia is supporting ISIS.
Yeah, financially.
Okay. What happened in Syria was that to overthrow the Assad regime, which is supported by Iran, they allowed the jihadis, they allowed the fighters to go into Syria from Turkey, and they initially were fighting the Assad regime. But then the revolution did not go as planned, and the Assad regime did very well because it was supported by Russia and Iran. And that is when they started to attract the most radical jihadis. And they turned away from fighting the Assad regime to ruling Syrian cities. So Saudi Arabia poured billions of dollars in weapons and cash to these jihadis, ostensibly as people who wanted to fight the Assad regime. But again, the same example with Osama bin Laden. You give them money to fight one direction, but they have their own minds and vision of what they want to do with that money. So they decided to form ISIS, take over Iraq, and take over parts of Syria, and now they are a threat to everyone. I don't know if I should answer that, or you want to take that?
Well, there were 40 pages of that 9/11 Commission report that have been classified, and that's about the relationship, the role of Saudi Arabia in 9/11. And there are people in Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, who want that declassified, and there is a bill. It's one of the other things that we could do is promote that.
Now, loving the Saudis is a bipartisan issue. Why? Because Republicans love oil money and love to sell weapons, and the Saudis are wonderful customers. So that's why you don't hear, Republicans screaming about, although they screamed about 9/11 and how we're not screening and we don't have enough security, but they love the Saudi oil money and they love to sell them weapons. So that's why we don't hear a whole lot about it.
Well, certainly the U.S., one of the justifications for the invasion of Afghanistan was to liberate the women, so we don't even have to go back to colonial. So I think your issue is very important, which is why it's got to be a go slow approach and only follow what there is an organized group within Saudi Arabia that's calling for international support. I would not go and just say, these are all the issues we want to work on, and go to the women's groups and say, let's get moving. Before we end, can we just say that I think because there's so few occasions that progressives can get together and talk about these issues, and hopefully many of you did sign up, I would love if anybody wants to stay behind and just talk about forming a group that might do some more work on this, or just putting a star by your name in the sign-up. Let's get something moving.
Excellent. Now we can applaud our speakers.